Okay, today we're going to talk a little bit about foreshortening, and then hopefully we are going to actually do some foreshortening drawings together so we can get started. We all know that the canon of the human body is roughly 7.5 heads high. Some people are like 7.25 or 7 maybe if they have a real big head. Or they might be overtly tall. They might be 8 of their own heads tall, but generally 7.5 of your own heads. So with that in mind, this concept blows everything out of proportion. Because what you have to do is you have to figure out, using the rules of space, which parts of the human body are closer, which means closer objects appear bigger, as you can tell by my little tiny screen over there. My hands got real big. Foreshortening is a way to very dramatically frame people. It's done in comics all the time. It's done in movies all the time. It's done everywhere, even in paintings, where they want something to look dramatic. Now, if you look at this guy in the middle and you measure his head, which means you actually take up your fingers, you measure him and you go down, he's about 1 3/4 of his own head's high. His feet are going to what would be known as a vanishing point. Because they are the furthest thing away from us, they are small. Because his head is the closest, it is big. And that's how foreshortening works. It's easy to do hands in foreshortening because you just make them big and you make everything else behind it smaller. The difference is this arm can't be 3 heads to the wrist anymore, because that arm being held directly at you gets smaller and smaller very quickly as it gets toward the body. In fact, if I were to do a fist right now on that little tiny screen, see how that works out? My arm is almost nothing compared to the knuckles on my fist. All right. Same way with this guy over here. When you look at this character here, is a little more in the manga proportions, but he has one big hand pointing straight at us. His arm almost completely collapses, disappears, and then one pointed on the other direction, but it's smaller because it's farther away from his body, as the one on that's toward us is bigger because it's closer to us than it is his body. Let's picture Deadpool here with the sword. Swords always look really strange in point perspective because nobody spends any time staring at a sword in point perspective, because that means that sword would be at your face. We try to stay away from stuff like that. But that's pretty much how it would look. You know, if you all ever want to know, hold something up to your eye, close the other one, make sure nobody's around you to mess up or push you, and everything will flatten. And that's the key to drawing on paper. Paper's flat. We have to take the 3D world, flatten it. Foreshortening makes it dramatic. That is the most buff picture of Spider-Man I've ever seen in my life. Big hand because it's closest, regular size head, and then this hand real tiny because it's thrust behind. It's going away, just like my hand in the little tiny screen is right now. It's so tiny, like it could almost fit a whole hand in my ear. That's gross and disturbing. So we take a look at this one. Big hand up front, almost normal size hand, but it feels like he's leaning. So that could be a little tinier than it should be. Tiny foot, farther away, bigger hands, regular head. There's not a whole lot of options foreshortening wise as far as positions. There's probably like 8 or 9 that constantly get used over and over again. The Superman or the Iron Man one in this case, with the fist forward, flying through the air, the feet getting smaller. That's a very typical superhero pose, and it's used a lot. We got a Wolverine one here. It's a little more creative, but because this leg, because this leg is bent back, you're not even seeing the rest of that leg. All right, this one's drawn a little bigger because it's moving forward. This hand big, almost the size of his head. This one pulled in tight toward him to his side. It's kind of normal proportion. Whereas this one with Wolverine's head leading and his shoulders kind of parallel with his head, these hands are roughly normal. Everything else gets smaller in the background. And they do the exact same thing with female characters, although sometimes the bosoms lead, as in this case with Captain Marvel, who at that point was called Miss Marvel. Batgirl, hand extended instead of a fist. That just shows you they do genderly treat characters differently. So just an FYI. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we are going to practice, and I'm going to walk you through some steps in class, and you follow me, and then you will be able to take and put your details over the top of this, throw in a word bubble or narrative box, and you are good to go. All right. All righty. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a panel. So I'm going to start. I'm going to only use about half the page here. Part of the reason I'm only using half the page is that this Elmo camera that I have to film through today isn't really good with using full pages, and it's not very high up in the sky. So I'm going to give myself a rectangle on which to start. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a very large potato off to the left side of this paper. All right, so what this is going to be is this is going to be the fist first drawing. All right. Off that fist to the right, I'm going to draw a tater tot, which becomes the thumb. Then I'm going to start to split that potato in two, and then I'm going to split the two twos into four. So what I got here, maybe I'll go a little lower with that thumb. Is I have got myself a fist. A lovely fist. It could even be a fist of fury. Now, I'm also going to give knuckles on the top of this fist. So kind of these roundy M's, like so. And I'll erase that. And I'll erase this. Now, what you have to decide, oh, that really comes out from the bottom, my bad. Let me get rid of that. The best part about drawing hands, if you ever wonder how one looks, you generally have two models with you at all times. So I would definitely say use them whenever you need to. All right, so from this point, I have to draw the head. Now the head is going to be eclipsed by the fist. So my head's going to go here. Now I need to make this head my character. In your case, I'm not 100% sure what that means because I don't have everybody's character sheet in. But in my case, my character has a comedy tragedy mask that's split down the middle. The sad eye is to the left side of his face. The angry eye is to the right. So just by doing this, I've already started to make my character. And my character is throwing a punch. Yeah, you have to draw this because you're going to have to turn this in, but it's going to be not my character, it's going to be your character. So that's why I'm doing it step by step. If I was just doing it for myself, I would be moving a lot quicker. Now, from back out behind this head, I'm going to do an upper body. And I'm going to do a second fist that's held back closer. So I will give you guys a couple of minutes to get caught up, basically because I've now realized that some people haven't even started. Now, for those of you who are done, start throwing your details on there. You know, what kind of shirt does he have? Does he have a collar? Or your character, I mean. My character has a collar. I'm going to go with that collar. Is this going to be one of the drawings where he has long hair? Honestly, I got rid of the hair during book 3. And really, he doesn't get the hair back till the Vampire Wars. And that's only because it's a functional weapon at that point. All right, that was our 2-minute mark. In that time period, what did I do with the bottom here? Well, I started to put out a ginormous narrative box. Couple of reasons. Number one, I really should have probably drawn it lower to include a word bubble. But basically, so I could show you guys this when you got caught up and you got your drawing done. This is how they would space writing back in the day. So if you did a narrative box or you did a word bubble, you'd have a top guideline and a bottom guideline. Then you'd have a little guideline that showed the space. And then you'd have a guy that would come up with a ruler, and he had more tools. All the letters would be at a slight slant. All right. And if you messed up a letter, you fixed it when you started to ink and you try to space them. Throw. That. Punch. And I would just continue onward. All right. This is part of the reason I want you guys to try to drop this into like a Google form where you can copy a bubble off the internet image search, where you can actually use type to type it in. Because doing this kind of thing is really kind of tedious and time consuming in this day of age. All right. So now, what could I add for the background? Well, I could add anything. If I was lame, I could add a color. If I want to draw a window and show the world outside, I could do that. I'm going to leave whatever background is in there up to you. All right. So we'll go with that for the time being. Okay. Let's do another one. And let's go this way with it. All right. Once again, I'm going to start with my boxes. Boom. Boom, boom. This time I'm going to draw that first picture we saw. And I'm completely doing the stick figure method. So what I've done here is I've done a big old head. I did my spine, which I'm going to have to collapse. I've done one foot up close. In fact, I've done this foot close enough that it goes out of frame. That makes me happy. And I've done a second foot close, but not as close. So I see the bottom of this foot above the panel line. I see the leg go back. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to get caught up with that, because that's a little bit more complex than we're used to doing figure-wise. And at the end of this class period, when you go and fill this stuff in, you should have 2 almost finished drawings. One of them is going to have a narrative box. You'll type in whatever you want to put in the bottom of that. Like, they gave him no reason not to fight. They had been horrible since he was little. I mean, just babble. I mean, really. That's how you get used to starting to write and come up with ideas. It's like creative lying. It's truly what story writing is, because none of that stuff really happened to you, not the way you're telling it. Sometimes in stories you make the character out to be a hero. Probably in real life you're not so much of a hero. You're a person. So filling up the frame. 1, 2, 3 heads to the crotch. Now, you're probably going, why is it just 3 heads to the crotch? It's supposed to be 4. Well, yeah, but the pelvic bone is tilted toward us. So if the pelvic bone is tilted toward us, it's actually foreshortened. So I can kind of get away with 3 heads to the crotch. All right. So now we're going to take that stick figure, start adding some muscles and parts into them. I'm going to go up with the shoulders like we're used to doing. I'm going to do my biceps, but my arms are actually behind the body. So since my arms are behind the body, they're not going to be quite as long as they normally are. And my legs are going to be kind of brought out like this. This gives me a chance to make anything a little larger than I think it should be. Like maybe I should have brought this leg out a little longer. That's fine. You can fix it. It's just pencil. All right. Any kind of clothes you want to put on your character, you can put on your character. Then we can go back and erase, start putting our details in. Right. So now your character doesn't have to have a trench coat. I don't know what your character looks like. So now is a good time to figure out if your character has some kind of clothing. Booyah. All right, I'll give you a couple minutes on that. And while you guys do that, I will prep this word bubble. So here's where we're at now. I didn't finish up my one rule of gravity is that it doesn't care if you don't believe in it. We're going to add a line in the background behind them and behind our word bubbles. This line is up to you. It can be a room line. It could be a horizon line. It could do any of those things that you need it to do for whatever your background. Now, if you got huge word bubbles like I've got, the background could be as simple as it was in our silhouettes, right? One object gives us kind of a clue of where they're at. And that's really where we need to be. So our first drawing, once you do your details, I want you to throw a narrative box, which means you have to scan your drawing in, post it into your Google Word, if you can get it to print your Google Word. And I think you can put a text bubble over it or a text box on it. Then you just type out whatever it is you want to say about your character. I was going to go on with this whole deal about he didn't want to throw that punch, but they had given him little choice. The fate of the universe hung in the balance, and he wasn't going to be a spectator as it died. That's a lot. Way easier to type that. If you can find out where the diction tool is on your laptop, you can actually talk that, and it will write it into the words for you. I have to keep turning mine off. It's kind of an annoyance. As far as the bubbles, your second foreshortening, I want you to steal from the internet images. Right click, save yourself some word bubbles, and then paste the word bubbles in, drop the text. Now, if you can't get any of that stuff to work, go old school. Draw the bubble, put up the guidelines, keep it short, right? Ow, I fell, or everybody looks tall from here, or whatever it is you need to say about your character. I do expect that you will finish your character's face. This seems to be the part that people are having the hardest time on in the character sheets, is they're not committing to clothing, details, eyeballs, noses, all that good stuff. All right. So we've got 2 small drawings that I'm going to grade. One, foreshortening on the ground, feet out. All right. Word bubble. One, fist out. We already drew this. All you got to do is add details. Narrative box. All right. And that's what I will expect for Friday. Now, we are running quickly out of time with the amount of days that you can submit this stuff. So hopefully you're starting with me in class and then you're taking the 10 minutes after class to finish it. That would be absolutely awesome because I want something to grade and I want you guys to pass. I worry about your futures because like that student I had way back in the day, maybe I never told you about that guy. Here, let's get out of this chat room. Nope. FaceTime. All right. So I had a student once, and there was a point when I first got into Elgin High, I was teaching sculpture 1, sculpture 2, sculpture 3, jewelry 1, jewelry 2, photo 1, photo 2. Yep, you got to draw both. Got to draw both for it to count. Photo 1, photo 2, design, drawing. There's like 8 or 9 classes I was teaching. And after a while, they let me just teach drawing because I was the oldest guy there. Seniority has its perks. So his kid's coming up to me one day and he goes, "Hey, Vaulato, I had you for this. I had you for this. I had you for this." And I start thinking about it and I'm like, I haven't taught those for a while. And then I started adding them up and I went, "What? How old are you?" And he goes, "Shh." No, I'm like, "Dude, seriously, how old are you?" He goes, "I just turned 21. I was like, "What?" I said, "Why are you here?" He goes, "Well, I didn't like gym." I'm like, "Excuse me?" He goes, "I never went to gym." I go, "So wait a minute, you're here at 21 years old because you didn't have enough gym credits?" And he's like, "Yeah." I go, "So how are they solving that for you?" He goes, "Well, I got to go in December. But I'm taking gym first hour, second hour, third hour, fourth hour, fifth hour. I take your class 6 hour, I eat lunch, I go home." And I go, "Are you going to graduate in December?" He goes, "Yeah, I think so." I go, "All right, that's good." He's a nice kid. He just didn't like gym class. Okay, so somebody just asked if they needed to draw a different pose. Look, if you want to give me a different pose, I'm totally cool with that. But there are a lot of people who are falling behind in their artwork. And if I can get you to do it during class and get you like 70% of the way done with the drawing, that means you just got to throw details in a word bubble and you get a grade, or a narrative box and a word bubble. So if you have ideas of your own, for the love of God, pursue them. If you found a cool foreshortening, go ahead and use it. All right, man. We are out of time. Have a lovely day. Stay out of trouble. Can't stay out of trouble. Don't get caught. Get these things turned in before Friday because we're doing 2 other ones on Friday. All right. Bye.